Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Wise Decision Maker Show, where we help you make the wisest and most profitable decisions. My name is Dr. Gleb Tsipursky. I'm the CEO of Disaster Avoidance Experts, the future of work consultancy that sponsors the Wise Decision Maker Show. And today with me is Andrew Filev, who's the CEO and founder of Wrike. Andrew, can you tell us a little bit about what Wrike does?
Hi, Gleb, and thank you for hosting me here. We're a collaborative work management platform. Our mission is to help teams and organizations do the best work of their life. And what we mean by that and how we're trying to do that is we help you organize the information that surrounds your projects and works so you can properly prioritize it. You can align and get visibility into that work so you can get more coordinated. And essentially you can focus on more important things and deliver them quicker in a less stressful environment.
Excellent. And you've seen the research from Microsoft on what they call productivity paranoia, where something like over 85% of managers have trouble trusting that their workers are productive when they're working remotely. So what in your experience is helpful for managers to have more trust that their workers are actually being productive?
That is a very important question because we've been, a lot of us have worked for decades in the offices. Now, some of us have had our experience with hybrid or remote work even before pandemic, but majority of people used to work in the office. And so from that perspective, they got into certain expectations. And one of those things is that subconsciously, they judge the amount of work or effort by just kind of, hey, is the person there and how it feels like those water cooler conversations as well. And so, and with remote work, you don't have that, right? So you have to redefine how do you judge their work and hard work of the employees you're doing. The most productive way, which, by the way, even forget about hybrid work pre-pandemic, it was always the best way. It's just that we did not always utilize it. The best way is to focus on outcomes and have very, very clear expectation. What defines the success of a certain job role or a certain initiative? A very, very, very clear definition about it. And if the person accomplishes that, then it means that they're doing an awesome work. Right now, life is more dynamic than that. And also in real life, you do not always accomplish the outcomes 100%, and oftentimes for good reasons. They might not be the best outcomes, or the world might have changed. So people also need to have visibility into the progress towards those outcomes, and that helps them kind of calibrate or course correct on the way to avoid having a dramatic difference of expectations at the finish line. And again, that's nothing new. It's always been a good principle of management people or project management for cross-functional leaders. It's just that right now in the remote work where we no longer see each other, that becomes more important. There are other factors that are more psychological that are involved as well. For example, we've all been familiar for, I think, almost 100 years now with the term road rage, where, people do things on the road and think and kind of get emotional in a way that they typically wouldn't if they're walking right next to that person, because we're isolated. Truly seeing their body language, and without that sort of face-to-face connection, again, it's easy to make certain assumptions and boil on them and have sort of that unproductive thoughts. And so in the face-to-face work there, it's much easier to de-escalate things, and vice versa. In hybrid work, people make false assumptions about their written communication. Now, tools like Zoom solve a little bit of that. You can see some of the facial expressions, some of the body language, but there are negative consequences as well. As first, again, evolutionary, and through tens of thousands of years, we've been wired in a certain way, and Zoom has not been part of that evolution up until very recently. And and it has a downside of driving what everybody knows as a Zoom fatigue, and we can talk separately about it, right? But
Okay.
there are some downsides in that video conferencing as a substitute for that face-to-face.
And so you talk about looking at employee progress and their tasks, and a number of managers have been using surveillance software, also known as bossware, to replace those observational encounters that they would have in the office. What are your thoughts about this software, surveillance software that monitors keystrokes, uses the video cameras, takes screenshots as a way for managers to address productivity paranoia and monitor their workers?
I understand where the companies are coming from, but it is a completely wrong way of approaching it, and I feel it's toxic and productive for a variety of ways. So first, the most important currency in the teamwork and collaboration is trust. And there's been plenty of studies that highlight the importance of it. And this, as you call it, bossware, completely destroys that. So it kind of hurts the foundation of productive teamwork. Second, there's actually been studies by Gartner that I forgot the exact percentage, but I think more than 50% of employees in that case start quote unquote cheating, or at least not cheating, maybe too harsh a word, but gaming the system. And you don't want to encourage your employees to game against the company. Again, that's wrong for motivation, and that also will bring in correct data, because you would think they're quote unquote working when they just figure out how to game the system, right? So that's not going to be helpful either. And then you're actually not getting the real visibility into the work that they're doing, and you're also, most importantly, not helping them to accomplish the outcomes. When we did their survey of knowledge workers and managers, we found a staggering amount of people reporting that one of the most unproductive things about their work is the coordination between different team members or between different teams. So you've done your work, right? But now, for example, you're waiting for the approval, and that approval doesn't come too early. Or in order to do your work, you're waiting on some other component by another team, and that other team has a different set of priorities, and so you're being blocked in your priorities. Or you're doing the work, and midways you realize that somebody didn't correctly set their requirements, and so some of that work now is away. So about 50 to 80% of productivity loss can be explained by that miscoordination, miscommunication, and the bossware has zero help there. And again, in fact, as we discussed, it just kind of destroys the relationship component. So this is where you can just getting visibility and having a clear plan of action, if it's kind of a unique initiative, or if it's a repeatable initiative, having a workflow that kind of defines who does what and when is much more helpful than the other approaches.
Okay, that's helpful. I have a similar opinion about bossware. So I helped 23 companies transition to long-term hybrid work, return to office dynamics. And what I do with them, instead of that once annual quarterly performance evaluation, we switch to weekly performance evaluations, very small ones, where the worker and their supervisor come up with 3 to 5 goals for the week, ideally SMART, specific, measurable, actionable, relevant, and timely. And then at the next meeting, they evaluate how the worker did those 3 to 5 goals. Maybe the supervisor coaches them in problem solving, gives them an evaluation for the week, and then they set 3 to 5 goals for the next week. What are your thoughts about this type of approach?
I'm a big fan. I wouldn't call it performance evaluation. I would call it just kind of good management practice. In fact, this was one of the first management practice I learned as an entrepreneur starting my first business, but decades ago. I was 17 years old, and back then I called it top 5. So, hey, what are my top 5 initiatives for the week? And then correspondingly for my team, what are their top 5 initiatives? And kind of being transparent about it within the team, I also find super helpful. So it's not just a one-on-one conversation, but that transparency in the team drives that peer pressure, which does magic and is much better than micromanagement or bossware or something like that. When the employees know that the kind of reputation is at stake, they typically, good employees will try to do their best work to do what they committed to do themselves. And again, it's not like you're forcing them to do. You're having the conversation, you're having the discussion, you're setting those goals, and then as a team or as a manager and employee, and then people are responsible for having those goals done. Now, this has been further codified in agile methods. So a lot of agile methods, for instance, the most popular right now is Scrum, and it's widely used in software engineering community, but then started to penetrate all walks of business. The agile teams, Scrum teams define sprints, and typically 2-week sprints with very, very clear defined goals that and then they also have daily stand-ups where they discuss the progress towards that goal. And it's absolutely adamantly religiously not shaming sessions. It's quite the opposite. It's kind of like trying to figure out if there are any roadblocks, and trying to have the whole team help the situation and address that. And one of the way agile teams help is they try to bring together cross-functional people, which eliminates that one of the productivity issues, which I highlighted, which is kind of ball getting dropped in between the teams, right? As opposed to if you have the fully functioning unit that can get the job done, and that unit is on the same page, literally or figuratively, and they're connecting every day, then they can get this from point A to point B very efficiently. So that's the foundation of agile methods. And right now, as more and more processes move towards digital world, we see more and more companies applying certain practices in their life.
Yeah, excellent. I like that team component as well, and the reputational elements. Now, as we come to the end of the interview, and we're talking about more digital methods, you and I chatted before the conversation about using AI. What, in your perspective, is the future of collaboration in remote settings? What do you see as the future?
Well, I think those AI and that question are connected, but also they're not the same question. So AI, I do think, will dramatically change the work environment. And a lot of businesses that are kind of trying to be ahead of their competition are right now having active conversations about how to adopt this practice. And in fact, I would recommend any board of directors to ask their CEO to come back with a presentation like, hey, what are we doing as a company to adopt AI in the organization, and how do we, not because it's hyped and cool, but specifically what business outcomes, what productivity outcomes are we going to drive in the company? And this is especially relevant right now because, as you know, the economy is under a lot of pressure, and most companies out there are asked to do more with less. And so this productivity approach is extremely important and can help teams get through this when again they're asked to do as much as they were asked to do 2 years ago with the teams that sometimes are 10-30% smaller. So AI is not going to do everything, but there are, for example, in our company, we have tactical plan of like, here's how we're going to apply it in sales. Here's how we're going to apply it in marketing. Here's how we're going to apply it in customer success. Here's how we're going to bring new innovative capabilities in our product that will allow us outcompete in the market. So we have very detailed plan that goes back into kind of the products and services that we ship, but also in how we're doing business internally. So that's I do think the impact is going to be huge. Now, in terms of our collaboration, it certainly will help things easier. And this is where it works in conjunction with work management, where right now people are dramatically overwhelmed by the amount of data they're getting in and by the number of apps that they're using. And they need to have much more clarity into that work that will help them reduce stress, improve productivity, and reduce the number of days and hours that they overwork. So there is a huge productivity improvement that can be gained by work management and by AI and by those two things together. So for example, you can, if we look a little bit forward ahead, right? We've got a lot of communications. You can easily use AI to summarize those so you can quicker get through those, right? You can use AI to figure out the action items and put it in your work management system. Again, you can use AI to complement work management system to get the status across 20 different projects or initiatives. So those things go very nicely hand in hand, and essentially they're helping you organize the chaos that you're living in. And one metaphor that I use is like, hey, do you want to manage your work, or do you want your work to manage you? And a lot of people are in that kind of hamster wheel where they're just like super reactive and things are getting out of control. And this is where, again, AI can help us focus on important things. And again, especially if you combine it with work management, that gives you that visibility.
Well, excellent. I think this is a great place to wrap up. Thank you very much for your expertise, Andrew.
Thanks, Gleb.
And thank you to the audience for checking out another episode of the Wise Decision Maker Show. Please make sure to subscribe wherever you checked out the show and leave a review. It helps others discover the show, and it helps us improve the show. All right, everyone. I look forward to seeing you in the next episode of the Wise Decision Maker Show. In the meantime, the wisest and most profitable decisions to you, my friends.